Everybody, welcome to this week's Commanders Countdown. Not a whole lot of news. There was some very bad news.
Always rough when we have to start the episodes this way. Unfortunately, on Saturday, we lost former Ohio State Buckeyes great and former Washington Redskin first round pick Dwayne Haskins in a tragic accident.
Yeah, definitely some sad news. I mean, I know I may have been critical of him in the past in terms of his playing ability on the field, but those kinds of things really aren't worth mentioning when somebody dies randomly, especially something like this.
Exactly.
Like, the Adam Schefter comment that he put out, whether or not the statement is accurate or not, it's really not the point. Like, you don't need to say those kinds of things when something like this happens.
And I have the tweet that Schefter put up before, and then he went and he actually changed his tweet after the fact and took out the performance-based part. But actually, because this has been a topic on a lot of Washington fans' minds and just a lot of football fans' minds in general, since this has happened just on Saturday, so just a couple days ago. But I actually went back and watched the footage from his first ever win from 2019 against the Lions. Remember that game when they beat the Lions 19-16? And so that was pretty cool. And then that's like the moment where he got his phone and he was like taking the selfies with the fans after the game. So it's pretty cool to get to like relive that moment, like probably his best like career moment ever. Obviously a promising young career ended too short. Who knows what would have happened in Pittsburgh? Maybe he would have caught on. Obviously the Pittsburgh quarterback room was wide open now with Ben
and he was still so young. I mean, even if he had a bit of a rocky
24.
start in the NFL, I know we're not trying to focus on that, but you never know where he would have gone. With more time to learn, and he went to another team.
He could have been great.
Some success.
And that's what I was going to say. Some of the throws that he made in that game, like he definitely showed that arm strength. I mean,
he has a good arm. He definitely does.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sorry. I guess he did. Oh man.
Yeah. And I mean, in this one season, he was legendary at Ohio State. 50 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. I mean, it was just an unreal season. And I mean,
if you're going to mention him, I would say that would be the thing to say, like Ohio State Buckeye legend. Like
Buckeye legend.
That's like the biggest because that's what I would go with.
Yeah, definitely. But thoughts and prayers go out to his family, and obviously in a very rough time that they're going through.
I'm not sure if we mentioned what the details were.
Oh no, I don't think we did. Yeah,
he was apparently walking down. I think it said he ran out of gas or something in a rental vehicle, and he was trying to cross the highway, and a truck hit him. So.
Yeah, definitely. I know it was like around 7 a.m., like a little before 7, so probably was a little bit dark out. So I would imagine that the visibility wasn't good. But I mean, hopefully. Obviously you hate to see something like that. And like I said, at just 24 years old, definitely rough.
Yeah, definitely. And in some other news, really the only other news, DeAndre Carter signs a 1-year contract with the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, real shitty to lose him.
Yeah, upon hearing about it at first, it's doesn't sound ideal, but given the draft prospects this year with how many receivers there are, I imagine that we're going to pick up somebody that's going to take that spot.
That's
so
true.
he did do a lot. He did some good for us, especially on the returns. But it happens. So with the draft, I think that's the right. It's not going to be a detrimental move to us. We're going to get somebody.
Yeah, I would hope so. I just liked his versatility. That they would use him out of the backfield, and he was also a threat as a receiver and also the special teams aspect.
Yeah.
I mean, he caught a career high last year of 24 passes for 296 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then he added a kick return touchdown, so 4 total touchdowns. He signs a 1-year
deal. That kick return
deal.
touchdown was nice. I remember that one.
Yeah, it was. So the Chargers are getting a weapon, another offensive weapon, when they add him. But I expect, and we'll talk about what Washington might target in the draft here in just a minute. There was one other roster move, not super notable. Probably many of you won't know that he was even on the roster. But DJ Hayden, former Oakland Raider first-round pick of 2013, who spent one game, or was active one game last year for Washington, was released.
Yeah, I didn't know who
Obviously,
he was when he
yeah,
mentioned it to me. I was like, I've never even heard of that dude.
not a huge shock considering they've got William Jackson, Kendall Fuller, um, Benjamin St. Juste, and they might even add another corner. Oh, and Danny Johnson. So those are like the top four corners. They might add another corner in the draft. We'll have to see what ends up happening there. Obviously, they've been linked to some corners as well, which we'll get
Hmm.
into now, because those are really the only notable moves. So yeah, so we've got the 11th pick in the draft. So obviously, there's been a lot of speculation of what they could do with that.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think a receiver would be a top choice. I don't know if it would necessarily be the first pick we go with. You might just take the best player available, especially on the defensive side. But we definitely need somebody to pair with Terry McLaurin. So I know in one of the first few picks for sure, probably more likely the second pick, it would probably be a receiver. But I could see them even going if a really good receiver is available at 11, they might go after that.
Yeah, I mean, this draft does have a lot of. I mean, you can get a good receiver in the second round in this draft with
Right.
who's going to be available, because obviously the names that we have here. So assuming, and I'm with you on that. I assume that probably a receiver has to be addressed either with the first or second pick. I personally think that they'll draft a receiver at 11. Obviously don't have any inside information to that. That's just my theory. I think that that's what they could benefit the most from. A defensive
Yeah,
player
same.
could help them as well, and then they
Hmm.
could also make a move on the offensive line. But if they were to draft a receiver at 11, a couple options that they could go with. Obviously, Chris Olave has been mentioned, and he's out of USC, and we know Ron likes him because we saw Ron talking to him at his pro day. So,
Hmm.
and what Olave's got is he's got speed. This kid ran a 4.2 40. He's a 6 foot 187 pound guy, so not a super big receiver, but obviously known for being very fast. Um, he would be projected to play as mostly a slot receiver, and the interesting thing about that is if they bring him in, he was actually a teammate of Terry McLaurin's at Ohio State. So Terry's actually been mentioned as saying that he's like a little brother, to him.
Mm.
So that
So
that
that
could
could
be
work
kind of
out
cool.
with a good team there, the two of them.
You've seen that kind of, the college and pro chemistry work with like Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, and also like
Hmm.
Tua and Jalen Waddle. So obviously, it can pay dividends, the chemistry that they have, carrying from the college to the pro game. So Olave's been mentioned as one option. Then obviously we've got Drake London, who Olave's the speed guy. Drake London is obviously the size guy. He's a big possession receiver, which he could play outside or in the slot. So he doesn't have as much speed. So that's his knock, or the ability to get separation. Um,
Right.
but he, like I said, he's going to be good at coming down with those 50-50 balls. Those jump ball situations. He can turn a 50-50 ball situation into a 70-30 advantage for the offense. And, he can just dominate the catch point because he's got fucking huge arms. And so what he lacks in speed, he makes up for in other ways. So he's been another guy that they've mentioned. Um,
Yeah, it just depends what the team is looking to do. If they want to keep adding speed, like to match with Terry, or they want to get somebody that can, take down the contested catches more like that. I think they would be better off going with more all-around speed, just to have that a similar weapon as Terry, in another area
yeah,
on the field, so they can't just lock down Terry. But it'll be interesting to see because they're definitely going to take a receiver
yeah,
at some point. So
yeah,
it'll be
yeah.
interesting to see who they take first, whether it be at 11 or it be in the second round, or whatever their next pick is.
They could also take Garrett Wilson, who's also from Ohio State. Ohio State had a bunch of really good receivers. Now, Garrett Wilson, also very fast. Not quite as fast as Olave, but he's not as good of a route runner. So he's seen as needing a little bit more polish to be, a pure NFL receiver. But obviously, he's got that speed, and speed's something that you can't teach. So he would be another
Yeah.
option that they could talk about potentially if they were to take a receiver at 11. A lot of these guys would probably be gone by the second round. But obviously, like we
Hmm.
said, this receiver class is super deep. So there's going to be receivers all throughout, probably the first 3 or 4 rounds that you can get a pretty good player.
Right.
And they could go a different route. Maybe they don't
They
take
could
a
go
receiver.
they could go quarterback,
They could go
which
quarterback.
obviously is always an option. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't see it happening necessarily.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
think they're going to go with Carson Wentz this season.
yeah.
And
Unless
we
they
got
really,
Taylor as a backup. Like we just don't. It doesn't seem like a good draft to make that move.
you would think if they really trust Wentz, like Ron's saying that they do, then they probably won't. I mean,
Right.
there are going to probably be some quarterbacks there. Obviously, we'll mention real briefly. There's Kenny Pickett. I think Kenny Pickett. I'll go on record to say I think Kenny Pickett's the best and most NFL-ready quarterback in the draft. Now, I don't know that he'll necessarily be the first taken, but I think that if you had to play a quarterback opening day, I think Kenny Pickett's the most ready. He's a 5-year
Right.
starter at Pitt, so I mean he's got a lot of playing time. I mean he's a good pocket passer with pretty good mobility. He's got a solid arm. Um, I think that personally he's going to be gone at 11. I think he's going to go number 6 to the Panthers. I think the Panthers are going to look to replace Sam Darnold, and I think Kenny Pickett's going to be the guy there, but he could be a guy that they're interested in. And then also
Malik Willis.
Malik Willis, yeah, he'd be the other one that I could see them being interested in, and he's got that rare combination of rushing and rocket arm ability, so he can do a lot of good things for you.
Yeah, he needs to be polished a little bit more. I wouldn't say he's quite as ready to start.
He's not ready. Yeah, he'd probably
No.
have to sit, and that's where
Yeah.
maybe like you said, if you have Wentz in there, and maybe if you don't completely trust, like I said, I don't think that's a move you make unless you're not completely sold on Wentz. I think if Ron really
Yeah.
thinks that Carson's going to be the franchise quarterback, then I don't think they're taking a quarterback. I mean, maybe you take a guy in the 3rd or 4th or 5th round as like a developmental guy, but
Right.
I mean,
I don't even
know.
necessarily think that he thinks Carson's going to be the franchise quarterback, but even if he thinks he's at least solid for the next year,
Yeah.
in order to draft a quarterback first like that, they have to make sure, or to try and trade up, whatever. It has to be a player that you really, really think you want, like for whatever
Right.
reason it is. And none of the quarterbacks in this draft seem to have that, X factor where it's like,
Right.
oh, well, we definitely need this guy. So
Yeah.
because of that, I don't think quarterbacks are going to only go to teams that are really desperate. And
Right.
Washington isn't now that we have Carson Wentz. So
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I mean, even like I said, even Kenny Pickett being the most polished of the quarterbacks, he's not like a gotta-have situation. And not like last
Right.
year, Trevor Lawrence was the clear, defined number 1 pick. It's like obviously everybody knew going in that Jacksonville was going to take him,
yeah,
and obviously they could go offensive line as well. And there's a big ass Kenyon Green, the offensive guard out of Texas A&M. Obviously, we know Andrew Norwell is going to fill one of the 2 guard spots because they lost Sheriff and Flowers. So with the loss of those 2, you needed 2 new guards. You got Andrew Norwell, and you need to replace one more. So maybe you go offensive guard. And
yes, that is true. That could be the only the other position I see them going early, and
Yeah.
probably not first round. That
Yeah.
seems unlikely, but
Well,
the following picks.
Well, Kenyon Green was the best ranked interior lineman in the SEC, which is where Alabama plays, and like all those insanely LSU plays, all those insanely good teams play that send 10 to 15 players a year to the NFL. So he's
Okay.
I mean he's a 325-pound mauler, but he also, what makes him interesting is he's made starts at every single offensive line position except center last year. So he started 4 different positions. So that's got to catch attention, for his versatility alone. So maybe Washington looks at Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M there.
Yeah, I guess that's really could be just as likely as a receiver, because I mean you got to protect Carson.
Yeah.
Can't protect the quarterback. It doesn't really matter what receivers you have. So I mean, they could do that first, even over a receiver, if he's really that good. If he's the best player that's available, and they do need offensive line, I could definitely see that.
Yeah. Now, one other position that we'll mention that actually a couple more. So there's also the possibility that they try to go best player available, and if he's available, you'd have to take a look at Kyle Hamilton, the safety out of Notre Dame. obviously the best safety in this year's draft. Now, Washington's got Bobby McCain, so Cam Curl, so they've got good safeties already, but obviously in losing Landon Collins, you could add additional depth, and Kyle Hamilton might be too good of a player to pass up, especially for Ron with his defensive pedigree. Now, he might be the best player in this whole draft. He's regarded in some draft classes as the top overall player. I don't think he's going to go first overall because Jacksonville has more need at edge rusher. I think they're going to take Aiden Hutchinson first overall.
Mm-hmm.
But he might be one of the best, at least one of the top 3 best players in this draft. I mean, he's got good size. He's 6'4", 220. So he can not only cover, but he can also play, play run defense and play along the line of scrimmage and really just clean the running back's clock if they need him to do that. I mean, this guy basically allowed 1 touchdown his entire college career in coverage, and he has the 3rd highest cover grade of any of the Power 5 safeties. So, yeah, I mean, maybe they look at adding another safety to the defense. That could be another move I see.
I think he'd probably go before 11 if he's really that good of a player. Somebody in the top 10 is probably going to take him.
Could be. I mean, unless teams get really like quarterback hungry, and like a lot of teams trade in to get their quarterbacks, which I could see. I could see Atlanta maybe trying to move in and get a quarterback a little bit sooner if they need to do that. And then the last one I'll mention just quickly, they could also go. I mean, this one's cooled down a little bit because there's talk that Cole Holcomb's just gonna remain at middle linebacker, so they might not go linebacker this early. But there's also Devin Lloyd, linebacker out of Utah, who's a very highly rated player out of the Power 5, 2nd highest graded linebacker, and he's got really good sideline to sideline speed, and he had 110 tackles, which led the Utah defense in 2021, and obviously he can be a good pass rushing linebacker as well, because he led the Pac-12 in he led the Pac-12 with 8 sacks as a linebacker. Sorry. Anyway.
Damn, that's a lot for a linebacker.
Yeah. So he had a really good season as far as that goes. So they could potentially move him. I mean, he played inside mostly in college, but as we mentioned with them wanting to play Cole Holcomb in the middle, or as the Mike, what they call it, they could potentially move him outside if they were to draft him, because he's proven that he's got the versatility to play inside or outside. So that could be another way. And then they've also been in a recent mock draft that I saw linked to cornerback Derek Stingley out of LSU. Stingley is a man coverage specialist. 56% of his snaps came out of press coverage. So and he allowed a completion percentage of 41% in college. He was injured. That kept him from participating in combine drills, but he was healthy for his pro day, and he put together pretty impressive pro day. And he probably wouldn't start in Washington since they have Kendall Fuller and William Jackson III, but he could definitely add depth along with like St. Just and come in on potential like known passing downs and provide man coverage. So that's also been a player that they've been linked to as well. So really a lot of positions mentioned in there. Everything from wide receiver to offensive guard to quarterback to linebacker, safety, cornerback. So
yeah, it's like draft speculation is kind of like it's one of those things. It's like, well, yeah, it could really be any number of things.
Yeah. Personally, I would have to say I see them taking either Kenyon Green or Olave at that position. That's who I have them taking.
I would agree. I would say the same. Yeah, either the offensive guard or the receiver for sure. It's probably going to be one of those two, if they're assuming that either of those are still available at 11.
Right, and obviously you've got to base that off of where the other 10 what the other 10 teams do in front of you, and you may have a guy in mind, and maybe that changes.
That's why like the speculation thing is just kind of like, man, no idea how it's going to play out. They might have this player in mind, and somebody takes them the pick before him,
and that's why teams will usually put like they have a lot of teams on their board, at least 5 to 10 teams or 5 to 10 players on their board in case that happens. So Yeah,
definitely.
but I mean, let us know who you think that the Commanders might take in the comments. I mean, who you want to see them take, because we'd be interested to know your thoughts as well.
Yep, and we will find out in the coming weeks and see how it goes. Get more and more excited for the next season, and then hopefully
Absolutely.
not get let down this time.
Yeah, absolutely. We're
But
hoping not.
yeah, that's about everything we got for you this week. Um, See what if there's any news over this next week. If not, we do have the draft coming up, and we'll definitely be covering that. So,
Yep, draft's about 2 weeks away now, folks. So we're getting close.
and remember to like and subscribe. See you next time.
And that's gonna do it this week for the Extra Point Show. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. If you're not already, make sure that you like and subscribe and follow us on all of the social media platforms. And check out our other video clips, like the Niners news update.
And the Commander's Countdown.
That's right. See you next week, everybody.